So I'm back to a variation of the code here where I have written each function to directly compare characters. So here, isLetter is asking whether the character is either uppercase or lowercase manually. IsUppercase is doing the same, and so is isLowercase. So no function is calling any of the other functions to help out. And what I want to talk about is the issue of how functions are arranged in the program. We might notice in this version, isLetter is up at the top. Why should that really make a difference? We know that, of course, the functions have to be in some order, but why should the order of functions make a difference? And it turns out that it really shouldn't. But we have to do a couple of extra things to explain to the compiler what functions we're using. So here's the task I want to perform. I want to rewrite isLetter the way we did originally, where isLetter was just the logical OR of isUppercase and isLowercase. I'm going to do that. So let's see. I'm going to return a character is a letter if it's either an uppercase letter or, there's logical or, it is a lowercase letter. So I should be able to do this. I did this in a previous video. I just did it in a previous video where the isLetter function was located somewhere else in my file. So we'll try compiling this. And we get these two warnings. And this is an example of a warning that we have to take very seriously. Because although it doesn't give us an error, in the worst case, even though it only gives a warning, the code will not behave correctly. It'll give the wrong output. What the compiler is saying is that on line 21, you have used the isUppercase function. But I have no idea what that is. I've never heard of an isUppercase function. Because if we scroll up, the compiler looks through our file from top to bottom. It starts up here, keeps going, and then you use isUppercase, and it says, I don't know what this is. You've never told me about an isUppercase function. Now, sure, you do eventually tell it about an isUppercase function, but until then it has no idea. And so what this is saying is implicit declaration. Well, that's a complicated way of saying, I don't know what this function is. I'll try and assume that this function will exist eventually, but in this course, we assume that, an implicit declaration is a kind of error because it can cause a lot of trouble. What we need is the ability to warn the compiler in advance that we're going to need a particular function. To assure it, don't worry, I'll give you this function later, but in the meantime, here is how to use it. And the way we do this is by what's called a function declaration or a function prototype. So what we do, if I want to use a function before I've defined it in my file, I go grab the function signature, I copy it, I bring it up to the top of the file somewhere, let's say up here, and then I put a semicolon at the end. So I duplicate the entire function signature verbatim, and I put a semicolon at the end. When I have it in this form, this is called a function declaration. It contains the function signature, so it warns the compiler, I am going to define a function called isUppercase, which takes one argument that's an int, and it returns an int. I am going to define that function eventually. In the meantime, please let me use it, because you will see this function defined at some point in the file. And then I'm going to do the same with isLowercase. I'm going to declare the function up at the top so that we can use it even before I've actually written the definition. All right. And so I've written my two function declarations, and we'll try compiling again. And we can see in this case, we don't get any warnings. And so I'll try running it just to prove that it works. We can see it does seem to work. D is not uppercase and is lowercase. W is uppercase but not lowercase. And so this solves that problem of what is the correct order to define our functions. And the answer is any order you want. You can define your functions in whatever order you want. Just make sure that you give function declarations for all the functions you're going to need, probably up at the top of your file, because that way the compiler doesn't get caught off guard when you try and use them.